A doctor was connected to more than 100 deaths and was never convicted. In 1957, John Bodkin Adams stood trial for murder in England. Despite months of investigation, disturbing patterns, and intense public scrutiny, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty in less than an hour. Decades later, the case remains one of the most controversial and unsettling medical mysteries in British history. John Bodkin Adams worked as a general practitioner in the elegant seaside town of Eastbourne. He lived alone, kept few close relationships, and dedicated his practice almost entirely to elderly and wealthy patients. While he was not regarded as an outstanding physician, many described him as attentive, calm, and deeply involved in the care of those nearing the end of their lives. Families often trusted him implicitly, and his bedside manner earned him a reputation for compassion. It is important to understand the medical context of the time. In the 1940s and 50s, options for pain management were limited. Morphine and heroin were commonly used to relieve severe suffering, particularly in terminal patients. Clear guidelines around dosage, consent, and end-of-life care were far less defined than they are today. This lack of structure would later become central to Adams's defense. At the same time, there were aspects of Adams's practice that quietly raised concern. He frequently administered powerful drugs, often in combination and sometimes in doses that later appeared unusually high. Even more troubling was his apparent interest in his patients' wills and personal affairs. Adams made little effort to hide the fact that he accepted gifts and legacies from patients, something many viewed as ethically questionable given the vulnerability of those under his care. Over time, a pattern appeared to emerge. Patients would experience sudden declines in health, followed by changes to their wills or estates that benefited the doctor. While none of this was illegal on its own, the repetition unsettled those who noticed it. One patient under Adams' care had been left partially paralyzed after suffering a severe stroke. To manage ongoing pain, insomnia, and neurological distress, Adams administered a combination of strong narcotics. Months before the patient's death, legal arrangements were amended to make it clear that Adams was to receive nothing. Despite this, after the death occurred, he still received money, valuable household items, and even a luxury vehicle. Several years later, another patient became seriously ill and slipped into unconsciousness while under Adams' supervision. Before the patient had died, Adams contacted a pathologist to arrange an autopsy. When the pathologist arrived and realized the patient was still alive, he accused Adams of extreme incompetence. The patient later died, with the cause initially recorded as natural, though a subsequent investigation questioned that conclusion and suggested poisoning as a possible explanation. Once again, Adams benefited financially after the death. As stories like these accumulated, gossip spread rapidly throughout Eastbourne. In a close-knit seaside town, suspicion traveled quickly. Some residents whispered that Adams persuaded wealthy patients to alter their wills shortly before death, then administered drug combinations that hastened the end. Others dismissed the rumors as malicious speculation aimed at a compassionate doctor working in an era with limited medical options. By the mid-1950s, the whispers had grown too loud to ignore. Police quietly began reviewing records and speaking with witnesses, while journalists seized on the story. Sensational headlines questioned how many wills might be involved, shaping public opinion long before any charges were filed. Adams had not yet entered a courtroom, but he was already being judged in the court of public opinion. In October of 1956, John Bodkin Adams was arrested on suspicion of murder. The arrest sent shockwaves through Eastbourne and divided the community overnight. Some believed justice had finally arrived. Others believed an innocent doctor was being destroyed by fear, rumor, and media pressure. The case would now move to trial. The trial began in March of 1957 and immediately drew national attention. The prosecution's case relied heavily on testimony from nurses who had worked alongside Adams while caring for terminally ill patients. Several nurses claimed they were alarmed by the large and frequent doses of pain-killing drugs he administered. They testified that they believed the dosages were excessive, but felt powerless to intervene due to the strict hierarchy of medical authority at the time. Initially, the prosecution's case appeared strong. The nurses' accounts painted a picture of a doctor who routinely pushed the boundaries of accepted medical practice. Newspapers across the country reported these testimonies in detail, further damaging Adams' public image. However, the defense introduced a critical turning point. Adams' legal team presented detailed medical notebooks that had been overlooked during the investigation. These notebooks documented patient conditions, injection times, and drug dosages over several years. They showed that treatments were carefully recorded and that similar practices were not uncommon in end-of-life care during that era. When examined closely in court, the written records conflicted with key elements of the nurse's testimony. In several instances, the nurse's recollections did not align with what they themselves had documented at the time. The defense suggested that memories may have been influenced by months of gossip and intense media coverage. Medical experts also disagreed sharply. Only one of the prosecution's expert witnesses was willing to state definitively that murder had occurred. The defense challenged that expert's credibility and raised doubts about whether the cause of death could be determined with certainty. Other expert testimony failed to establish clear criminal intent. Crucially, evidence related to other suspicious deaths was ruled inadmissible. This meant the jury never heard about several cases police believed demonstrated a broader pattern of behavior. Adams himself never took the witness stand, and testimony related to those additional allegations was excluded entirely. After deliberating for just 45 minutes, the jury returned its verdict: not guilty. Despite the acquittal, suspicion did not disappear. Police and journalists continued to believe Adams may have been responsible for multiple deaths. One reporter later claimed authorities prosecuted before their case was fully prepared because they feared Adams would continue practicing if they delayed. Later that same year, Adams resigned from the National Health Service and was convicted on unrelated charges involving forged prescriptions. He was removed from the medical register, though years later he was quietly reinstated. He continued living in Eastbourne until his death in 1983. By the time he died, Adams had accumulated a substantial fortune and had continued receiving legacies for decades. Even today, historians, doctors, and true crime researchers remain deeply divided. Some believe he was a compassionate physician providing mercy in a harsh medical era. Others believe he was a killer who was never truly held accountable. Comparisons have since been drawn to figures like Harold Shipman, but unlike Shipman, Adams was never convicted of murder. The question remains unresolved. Was John Bodkin Adams an angel of mercy or something far darker?